Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to The Truth, where today we're going to talk about the Cleveland Browns. Now, I know there are a lot of different opinions on Cleveland in general, but the Browns aren't the team you normally think of. They're in a very unique situation. Look, they're about 21, they're about $20.5 million over the cap this year. Not great, but also still very workable. The one thing I did specifically want to talk about, though, is their free agents that are leaving, that they're impactful free agents that Sports Track has them leaving this season. Because it's not nothing crazy. One, Kareem Hunt, which they've already kind of moved on from, and they brought him back as kind of like a body, but they're already trying to move on from Kareem Hunt. So I expect that one to leave. The next one is Zadarius Smith. Now, coming into this season, Zadarius Smith was viewed as a really nice pickup to which can be very beneficial to help out with Myles Garrett. And he just never pinned out like that. Zadarius Smith, statistically wise, and I hate using statistics, but sometimes I do to get a point across, he was more of a rotational piece, if anything. Look, 6 sacks, 18 tackles. I mean, that you could get that value out of a quality rotational piece that isn't 31 and will cost you $12.5 million. Going back to it, they're probably a couple players away, restructuring wise, that they could honestly get under the cap. It wouldn't be necessarily hard. Look, I think the big and obvious one is Deshaun Watson. I know Deshaun Watson hasn't been the quarterback a lot of Cleveland fans have wanted him to be, but I mean, he's doing enough. I'll say that. If you do restructure his contract, he does gain $9 million at the end, but it feels like you need to. Look, his cap hit's $63 million. He's getting paid right now around 50. That's about $55 million this year for what, being injured, getting hurt. I know there's not a lot of good reputation with him. I feel like one, it's kind of an obvious way to one, buy back the fans, and to two, help the team out. Because I mean, if you just restructured his contract, I mean, you'd be under the cap easy. That's a really big one. You know, the Cleveland Browns have a relatively nice offensive line, especially when it comes to the run game too. They're a really well built team. They just have some couple holes. Going into the 2022 season, the Cleveland Browns went 7-10. Not really good, but you got also acknowledge Watson didn't play majority of the season and then came back and was rusty. And then this season, he was still rusty, got injured, but they still did better. They won 4 more games. They went 11-6. That's a huge step up from a team who didn't have their starting quarterback their entire season. Look, this team is well built and they're getting better. There are a key couple topics that I do want to hit, so this video will probably be a little bit longer, but I think it'll be really interesting. Getting into it, the Cleveland Browns, starting wise, need 2 linebackers and a defensive tackle. Depth wise, need a receiver, defensive tackle, linebacker, and safety. The Cleveland Browns are one of the few teams who have enough picks, just the right amount, to actually fill all of their needs. However, I would restructure and be able to sign a nice linebacker to pair along with a guy they draft this year. That way, they're in a position to where they have experience, but also youth at that position. Because this is also isn't a very highly touted or stacked linebacking core as maybe other drafts. So it also kind of backs up that idea. But with the first pick, I took T'Vondre Sweat. Sweat's a guy who played with Texas, who is a guy who didn't really get the attention he deserved when it comes to viewership wise. But when you turned on the tape, you knew you had to stop T'Vondre Sweat. He is, needless to say, a ginormous human at 6'4", 346 pounds. Look, he's going to help stop the run. He's going to get in the backfield and disrupt the pass as well. He's a guy who demands double teams. I mean, look, Sweat might even go in the early second, late first round. That's how good of a guy you could potentially get if you're Cleveland. I think this is one of the more loaded defensive tackle classes too. Um, Look, the one thing you like about Sweat is against double teams, against single teams in the run game, he will dominate. Strong, big at the point of attack. You know, I wouldn't look at this guy's stats and go and kind of make your opinion off of that. This is a guy you have to turn on the team, turn on the film and really watch and see how impactful he was for Texas and why their defense did so well. The next guy I would take for Cleveland is Jeremiah Trotter Jr., JTJ. 6 foot, 230 pounds, linebacker out of Clemson is more of your typical linebacker. Not height wise, but weight wise, he is a bit of a stockier linebacker, but he plays with a lot of experience and great instincts, good awareness. He plays like he has experience more than he probably should. Um, Look, this is a guy who's going. It's kind of your plug and play guy. Great in stopping the run, reliable tackler, and is able to drop back into coverage. This is a guy who can also kind of rush. You can kind of blitz him and get some sacks off of it too. This is a really nice, well-rounded linebacker. The only knock on him is probably his height, and probably the fact that he's also a rookie coming into the season. Nevertheless, to say this is a great pickup if possible for Cleveland. I think they built a fairly nice linebacking core. Um, Going to their third pick at 134, there actually weren't linebackers available, and the best available linebacker is the one I picked with the next pick. So instead of normally kind of deviating away, I went to the best player for the position of need that the Cleveland Browns have, and at depth, it was defensive tackle as well. 6'01", 308 pounds. Tyler Davis, defensive tackle out of Clemson. Kind of that similar role as Tavondre Sweat, just shorter. But look, I mean, it's always nice to have depth at that position because you never know what can happen. Getting to pick 154, I have Aaron Casey. None of the stats are listed. Linebacker of Indiana. This guy's going to bring depth. This guy's going to bring. He's going to be a guy who can kind of fill in when you need to. Next pick was Jawan Jackson out of receiver out of Tulane. Tulane wasn't actually a really bad school. They also don't have their stats up. But no, Jawan Jackson, or I hope I'm saying Jawan. I don't know how to say that correctly. Jackson was a really good receiver out of Tulane. Look, Tulane did really well. They utilized their weapons, I think, fairly well, and the reason why they went so deep. But I think this is a nice quality pickup for youth and maybe the future even further. At worst, he's a special teams guy. At best, he's probably either a start, like a third string right now, a third string, or kind of a rotational piece. And it can be very beneficial to Cleveland, who can have that 1-2-3 combo. Next, I picked Vaki out of Utah, safety out of Utah. Like I said, there's also depth. Nothing crazy here. Guys who fall in this late usually aren't the best, but they do provide quality depth. And that's the same with Darius out of UCLA, linebacker. It's also depth. I know I said Aaron Casey's depth, but worst comes to shove, you have to put him out there. I wouldn't recommend it. I think he's a nice depth piece. Don't think he is a day one starter that you would be looking for if you're Cleveland. Like I said before, I've talked about my opinion. I think you should go out free agency and get a starter. But no, nevertheless, this was their draft. I think it came out well. I just think depending on how they attack free agency, it could be even better. Like I said before, the Cleveland Browns are a team who can have the potential to do a lot and really actually make a run at it this year. They're a team who's really at 11-6. They made the playoffs. They're a team who, as long as they stay healthy, they can run the tables on teams. They can compete. So I think that's very hard to talk about. One thing I did want to talk about, which I thought was interesting, was the acquisition of wide receiver Marquez Brown being that 1-2-3 combo. Now, while they don't need necessarily a starter, bringing competition, and while they don't need a starter, but they do need depth, bringing competition for that third receiver, or even maybe telling other guys that they'd have to beat this guy out to be the third receiver, I think is really nice. I think with the receivers they had and then the addition of Brown, it creates a nice amount of weapons that Deshaun would be able to throw to and feel more comfortable in this offense. I feel like that's the best thing you can do right now when you're paying guys so much is to get him weapons. Relatively cheap too. I don't think Marquez Brown's going to cost you the world. Um, Getting into the next topic I want to talk about, um, the Browns are likely to meet with free agent Zadarius Smith at the 2024 Combine. Look, I've already kind of talked my opinion on Zadarius, but I mean, if you do bring him back, I'm not going to say it's a terrible decision. He is a guy who has played in this defense, understands his defense better, and has given you actual sacks. So, nevertheless, more depth is always better. Um, and the last thing I wanted to talk about today on today's video is something that doesn't really pertain to the Browns, but pertains to well, talks about all the NFL teams. The NFL is being reported right now that they're going to raise the salary cap $8 million for each team. This will now make the cap at $250 million per team. It's nice to kind of get an idea now officially of where the cap's going to be because now you're probably going to start seeing some restructures, some filling around, maybe some more cuts. Soon enough, probably trades. I expect to start happening. Probably, well, I expect trades stopping probably more later down the road, near more the either middle free agency or near the start of the draft. With that being said, like I said before, I think the Browns have a very bright future. I like where they're headed. If they do sign, a receiver, which I don't mind them doing, like I said before, I'd rather them go after linebacker. I mean, I think it helps. Of course, it attacks one of these positions of need. Nevertheless, to say. But then again, thank you all for watching. Let me know what y'all think on the video, and I will talk to y'all next time.